The Galactic Council chamber gleamed like a jewel among the stars. Inside the massive circular hall, creatures from 47 different worlds gathered for their monthly assembly. Some breathed through gills, others through mechanical filters. Some had scales, some had fur, and some were made of pure energy contained in special suits. Admiral Thomas Grant stood in the human section, his hands clasped behind his back. He wore the dark blue uniform of the United Earth Defense Force, though the galaxy rarely saw Earth's military in action. Beside him, Ambassador Rachel Morrison checked her communication device for the third time in 10 minutes. Something felt wrong. The Sci-Fi delegation entered through the main doors, and the room fell silent. These reptilian warriors stood nearly 8 feet tall, their bodies covered in scales that changed color based on their emotions. Leading them was War Commander Veldar, whose bright red scales marked him as warrior royalty. Behind him, 6 other Sci-Fi soldiers marched in perfect formation, their clawed feet clicking against the polished floor. Elder Morvine, the ancient keeper of galactic records, spoke first. His species had lived for thousands of years and remembered when humans first discovered faster-than-light travel. War Commander Veldar, the Council recognizes you. Please state your business. Veldar's voice was deep and filled with pride. Honored Council members, I come with news of victory. The Sci-Fi Empire has eliminated a threat in Sector 773. An unknown vessel was attempting to establish an illegal colony in territory we claimed last year. Rachel's device began vibrating urgently. She looked at the screen and her face went pale. She turned to Thomas and whispered, "It was the New Horizon. They destroyed our colony ship." Thomas felt his heart stop. The New Horizon carried 15,000 civilians. Teachers, engineers, farmers, children. All dead. He stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "Commander Veldar, that vessel was the UEDS New Horizon, a civilian colony ship. It carried 15,000 unarmed men, women, and children. They had legal documentation showing their purchased rights to settle on Kepler 442b. The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. Several alien species began speaking rapidly in their own languages. The Sci-Fi commander, however, seemed completely unbothered. "Your species claims rights to many systems," Veldar said, waving his clawed hand dismissively. "Yet you control fewer than 30 worlds. The Sci-Fi Empire has conquered 212 systems. We took them with blood and fire. That is how power works in this galaxy. The strong take what they want. The weak die." Rachel's voice shook with barely controlled anger. "They sent 17 distress calls. They begged you to let them pass. They offered to change their course. You slaughtered them anyway." Veldar's scales rippled in patterns that his species used for laughter. "Begging? Distress calls? These are the sounds prey makes before death. Warriors do not answer such pathetic noises. If your species wishes to survive in this galaxy, you must learn to be strong. You control a tiny corner of space and have fought no wars since joining this council 300 years ago. You are sheep pretending to be wolves." Elder Morvine raised one ancient hand. "War Commander, I must advise you to reconsider your words. The humans are not what you—" "The humans are nothing," Veldar interrupted, his scales flashing orange with contempt. "They build their little colonies and make their little rules and never enforce them. They have no warrior tradition. No honor. No strength. My people have destroyed civilizations that would make humans weep with fear." Thomas stepped to the center of the chamber. Every eye in the room turned to him. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, but it carried clearly through the vast space. "War Commander Veldar, on behalf of the United Earth Government, I formally demand your surrender. You and every commander who participated in the attack must face trial for war crimes. You have 72 hours to comply with this demand." For a moment, complete silence filled the chamber. Then Veldar threw his head back and roared with laughter. His entire delegation joined him, their combined voices echoing off the walls like thunder. Other species shifted uncomfortably, unsure whether to be frightened or amused. "Or what, human?" Veldar managed to say between fits of laughter. "What will you do? Send us angry messages? Stop trading with us? The Sci-Fi Empire fears nothing from your kind. We have crushed armies of millions. We have burned entire star systems. What have humans ever conquered?" Thomas met the alien's eyes without blinking. "We conquered ourselves." The statement seemed to confuse Veldar. Before he could respond, Rachel activated their delegation's emergency broadcast system. 72 hours, Commander. Not 1 minute more. After that, Earth considers itself at war with the Sci-Fi Empire. We will respond with everything we have. Veldar turned his back on them, which was a deadly insult in his culture. The Scytherai do not surrender to prey animals. Return to your little corner of space, humans. Be grateful we allow you to exist at all. As the Scytherai marched out of the chamber, Elder Morvine rushed over to the human delegation. His expression was filled with sadness and fear. Admiral, Ambassador, please come with me immediately. There is something you must understand. In a private room away from the main chamber, the elderly archivist pulled up holographic images that floated in the air. Earth appeared, rotating slowly, showing images of ice ages, volcanic eruptions, and devastating wars. My species has studied humanity since you first used radio waves, Morvine said softly. We know your history. Every other species in this council evolved on gentle worlds with moderate climates. But Earth? He shook his head. Earth tried to kill you for millions of years. Ice ages, supervolcanoes, asteroid strikes, plagues. You should have gone extinct a dozen times. But you never did. He pulled up images of human wars. Trenches filled with mud and bodies. Cities turned to ash by atomic fire. Numbers appeared showing casualties in the millions. Other species fight for honor or glory or territory, Morvine continued. But humans fight for survival. You fight the way your planet taught you to fight, with absolute determination to live no matter the cost. The Scytherai do not understand what they have done. Rachel stared at the images of World War II. We did not want this, Elder. I know, child. That is what makes it so terrible. The archivist's eyes were ancient and sad. The Scytherai will not surrender. Their culture cannot allow it. And in 72 hours, this galaxy will learn something it has never known before. What is that? Thomas asked. That the most dangerous species is not the one with the biggest weapons or the most systems conquered. Morvine turned off the displays. It is the species that knows how to survive when everything else has failed. After the elder left, Thomas looked at Rachel. Send the recall code. Every ship, every base, every soldier. Full mobilization. Rachel's fingers hesitated over her device. The council will panic when they see what we have been hiding. Let them panic, Thomas said quietly. In 72 hours, they will understand why humanity never built an empire. We were too busy learning how to survive ourselves. The countdown clock on Admiral Thomas Grant's command screen showed 18 hours remaining. Around him, the bridge of the UEDS Indomitable hummed with quiet efficiency. Officers moved between stations, speaking in low voices, checking weapons systems that had never been used in actual combat. Lieutenant Helen Price looked up from her communications console. Admiral, we are receiving distress signals from human outposts along the border. The Scytherai are launching attacks. Thomas felt his jaw tighten. The 72 hours were not even finished, and already the enemy was attacking. Show me. The main screen flickered to life. A shaky video feed showed the human mining colony on Titan 7. Families were running through corridors as alarms blared. Then the image turned to static as Scytherai missiles struck the facility. How many? Thomas asked quietly. Preliminary reports show 400 dead, sir. They hit the residential dome first. Mostly families. Children. Rachel Morrison stood beside the Admiral's chair, her face pale. They are sending us a message. They want us to know they can hurt us whenever they want. Thomas turned to his tactical officer, Captain Emily Foster. What is our fleet status? Emily pulled up a holographic display showing hundreds of blue dots spreading across space. All vessels are responding to the recall. We have 317 ships combat ready. Another 200 will be ready within 48 hours. An older council member would have been shocked by those numbers. Humanity had officially reported only 42 military vessels. But Earth had learned long ago that honest species do not survive in a dangerous galaxy. They had been building ships in secret for decades, hiding them in asteroid fields and behind the moons of gas giants. Admiral, another officer called out. We are getting a transmission from the Scytherai homeworld. It is being broadcast across the entire galaxy. Veldar's face appeared on the screen, his red scales glowing with triumph. Behind him stood dozens of other Scytherai commanders, all wearing armor decorated with kill marks. Humans of Earth, Veldar began, his voice dripping with contempt. Your time in this galaxy is finished. You had your chance to accept your place as servants to stronger species. Instead, you dared to threaten the Scytherai Empire. Now you will learn what happens to those who challenge true warriors. We have already destroyed your pathetic colony on Titan 7. More attacks will follow. Surrender now, give us 10 of your worlds, and perhaps we will allow your species to continue existing. The transmission ended. Silence filled the bridge. Thomas could feel the anger radiating from every person in the room. These were professional soldiers, trained to follow orders and maintain discipline. But they were also human, and humans had limits. Sir, Emily said carefully. The fleet is requesting permission to engage. Thomas stood and walked to the large window at the front of the bridge. Outside, he could see Earth hanging in space like a blue and white marble. That beautiful, terrible planet that had tried to kill his species for millions of years. The planet that had made humans into survivors. He remembered his history lessons from childhood. His teacher, Mrs. Anderson, had shown them images of the Ice Age, when early humans had survived temperatures that should have killed them all. Then came the plagues, the famines, the wars. World War I with its trenches and poison gas. World War II with its atomic fire. The small conflicts that followed, each teaching humanity new lessons about violence and survival. Admiral? Emily prompted gently. Thomas turned back to face his crew. Open a channel to all fleet commanders. Maximum encryption. Moments later, faces appeared on smaller screens surrounding the main display. Ship captains, marine commanders, special operations leaders. All of them waiting for orders. This is Admiral Grant, he began. 72 hours ago, the Sci-Fi Empire murdered 15,000 unarmed civilians. 18 hours ago, they murdered 400 more, including children in their beds. They think we are weak because we have not fought a major war in 300 years. They think our peace means we have forgotten how to fight. He paused, letting his words sink in. They are wrong. We stayed peaceful because we remember what we are capable of. We stayed peaceful because we know what happens when humanity goes to war. But they have made their choice, and now we make ours. Thomas looked directly into the camera. Protocol Omega-7 is now active. Rules of engagement are suspended. You are authorized to use any and all weapons systems. You are authorized to strike any military target without waiting for confirmation. This is total war, and it will not end until the Sci-Fi Empire surrenders unconditionally or ceases to exist. One of the commanders, Captain Marcus Webb of the assault carrier Resilience, raised his hand. Sir, what about Council laws regarding prohibited weapons? The Council did not protect our civilians, Thomas said flatly. We will protect ourselves. If that means breaking their laws, so be it. Use everything we have. Show them what humans learned from surviving Earth. The commanders nodded and began disconnecting from the conference. Only Captain Jennifer Blake of the cruiser Perseverance remained. Admiral, the Sci-Fi have 200 Concord systems. They have fleets 10 times our size. How do we win this? Thomas allowed himself a small, cold smile. The same way humans have always won, Captain. We survive longer than they can keep fighting. We adapt faster than they can respond. And we make them pay such a terrible price for every attack that they beg us to stop. Back on Earth, in the deep command bunker beneath the Swiss mountains, General Peter Harris was addressing his staff. Maps covered the walls showing Sci-Fi territory in red and human space in blue. The red section was enormous compared to the tiny blue cluster. I know what you are thinking, Peter said. You are thinking we are outmatched. They have more ships, more soldiers, more resources. And you are right. He pressed a button and the map changed. Now it showed supply lines, trade routes, and resource centers. But wars are not won by who has the most. Wars are won by who can sustain the fight longest. The Sci-Fi Empire is built on conquest. They take from others. But look at their supply lines. Every resource comes from conquered worlds that hate them. Every factory is staffed by slaves waiting to rebel. Every system they control requires ships and soldiers to keep the population under control. A young officer named Lieutenant David Stone spoke up. So we attack their supply lines? We do more than that, Peter said. We give those conquered worlds hope. We broadcast our attacks everywhere. We show them that the mighty Sci-Fi can bleed. And when they see that, they will rise up. The Sci-Fi will be fighting a war on 1,000 fronts. In orbit above Mars, Captain Jennifer Blake stood in the hangar of her ship, watching as crews loaded weapons into fighter craft. Her wife and daughter were in a shelter deep underground, safe for now. Jennifer had promised to come home, but she knew that promise might be a lie. A young pilot approached her. Captain Blake, is it true we are using the quantum torpedoes? Jennifer nodded. Everything we have, Lieutenant. No holding back. But Those weapons can crack a planet's crust. They are banned by council law. The Sci-Fi cracked those laws first when they murdered our people. Jennifer placed a hand on the young pilot's shoulder. I know this is hard. We trained our whole lives to be defenders, not attackers. But sometimes defense means making the enemy regret they ever threatened you. Across human space, similar scenes were playing out. Marines checked their armor. Engineers tested experimental weapons. Scientists activated devices that bent physics in ways that frightened even them. All of Earth's hidden technology, developed in secret for decades, was coming online at once. The sleeping giant was awake. And it was very, very angry. On the Sci-Fi homeworld, War Commander Velvar stood in his command center, surrounded by holographic displays showing his fleets. He was explaining his strategy to his second-in-command. The humans have sent their fleet toward Sector 9. They think to strike at our forward bases. Let them come. We will crush them with superior numbers, and the galaxy will see that the Sci-Fi remains supreme. His second-in-command, a scarred veteran named Corvex, looked troubled. Commander, the elder of the archivists sent us a warning. He says humans fight differently than other species. He says. I do not care what ancient cowards say, Velvar snapped. In 6 hours, our fleets will meet the human fleet. In 12 hours, this war will be over. And in 24 hours, Earth itself will bow before the Sci-Fi Empire. But Velvar did not know that the human fleet moving toward Sector 9 was only a fraction of Earth's forces. He did not know about the ships hiding in asteroid fields. He did not know about the weapons that violated every council law. He did not know that humans had spent 300 years studying every species in the galaxy, learning their weaknesses, preparing for a war they hoped would never come. The countdown reached 0. And the real war began. The Battle of Proxima Station began at 0600 hours Galactic Standard Time. War Commander Velvar watched from his flagship as 300 Sci-Fi warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Before them hung Proxima Station, a human military outpost orbiting a red dwarf star. Defending it were exactly 50 human vessels. They send so few ships, Velvar said, his scales brightening with amusement. This will be over in minutes. His tactical officer, Corvex, studied the scanner readings with growing unease. Commander, the human ships are not retreating. They are advancing directly toward us. Foolish prey, Velvar hissed. All ships, open fire. Destroy them. The Sci-Fi fleet unleashed a wall of plasma fire that lit up space like a small sun. The human ships scattered in all directions, moving with unexpected speed and agility. Half the plasma bolts missed completely, striking empty space where the human vessels had been moments before. Then the humans returned fire. Captain Jennifer Blake sat in the command chair of the cruiser Perseverance, watching her tactical display with cold focus. Target their command ships first. Quantum torpedoes, maximum yield. Her weapons officer, Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell, hesitated for only a second. These weapons had never been used in actual combat. They could tear holes in reality itself. Firing now, Captain. Blue-white streaks of light shot from the Perseverance and 3 other human cruisers. The torpedoes passed through normal space and then simply vanished, reappearing inside the shields of 4 Sci-Fi command vessels. The explosions were spectacular. Each ship folded in on itself before erupting outward, taking nearby vessels with them in chains of secondary explosions. On Velvar's flagship, alarm screamed. What weapon was that? He roared. How did they penetrate our shields? Unknown, Commander. The projectiles seemed to bypass three-dimensional space entirely. Impossible. Such technology does not exist. But it did exist, developed by human scientists who had studied quantum mechanics not for warfare but for exploration. When war came, they adapted their research with terrifying efficiency. The human fleet did not fight like any opponent the Sci-Fi had faced before. They did not form battle lines or engage in honorable ship-to-ship combat. Instead, they swarmed like insects, attacking from multiple angles, targeting specific systems with surgical precision. Commander Marcus Webb led a squadron of fighters in a maneuver no Sci-Fi pilot would ever attempt. He flew directly toward a Sci-Fi battleship, weapons blazing, then at the last possible second veered away. Behind him, dozens of small drones continued on the same path. Brace for impact, he said calmly. The drones struck the battleship's hull and detonated. But these were not normal explosives. They were nanoswarms, microscopic machines that began eating through the ship's armor like acid through paper. Within minutes, the massive battleship was venting atmosphere and spinning out of control. That is not honorable combat, Corvex whispered in horror, watching the battleship die. No, agreed Captain Emily Foster from her position on the human destroyer Relentless. It is war. And in war, the only honor is in protecting your people. The battle raged for 6 hours. The Scytherai had superior numbers and firepower. They destroyed 23 human ships, celebrating each kill as a victory. But the cost was staggering. By the time human forces retreated, the Scytherai had lost 180 vessels. Bodies floated in space by the thousands. Veldar stood among the wreckage of his fleet, his scales dark with shock. We won, he said numbly. We held the field. We destroyed their ships. We lost 60% of our fleet, Commander, Corvex said quietly. They lost less than half their forces. This was not victory. Back on Earth, Admiral Thomas Grant studied the battle reports with satisfaction. We hurt them badly. And we showed them something important. What is that, sir? Asked Rachel Morrison, who had been watching the battle from the command center. That we are willing to sacrifice our ships to destroy theirs. The Scytherai fight for glory and honor. They expect their enemies to value their own lives. But humans? Thomas shook his head. We have a long history of suicide attacks. Kamikaze pilots, suicide bombers, soldiers who throw themselves on grenades to save their friends. When survival is at stake, we do not calculate acceptable losses. We calculate necessary sacrifices. Rachel looked at the names of the 600 soldiers who had died at Proxima Station. Those sacrifices have names, Admiral. I know, Thomas said softly. And we will remember every single one. But we will also make their deaths mean something. Over the next 3 weeks, humanity launched a campaign unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They did not attack military targets exclusively. They attacked everything that kept the Scytherai Empire functioning. Captain David Stone led a team of cyber warfare specialists who infiltrated Scytherai communication networks. They did not simply jam signals. They broadcast images of Scytherai defeats across every conquered world. They showed Scytherai ships burning. They showed Scytherai commanders retreating in panic. They showed that the mighty empire could be hurt. On the conquered world of Vela Prime, slave workers saw these broadcasts and began to hope. Within days, riots broke out in 3 factory cities. The Scytherai had to divert 2 full fleets to restore order, fleets that were desperately needed at the front lines. Lieutenant Rebecca Harris specialized in unconventional warfare. Her team slipped into Scytherai space using captured enemy ships. They did not engage in direct combat. Instead, they destroyed supply depots, sabotaged fuel refineries, and planted false intelligence that sent entire fleets chasing phantom human forces. We are ghosts, Rebecca told her team as they prepared for another mission. We are everywhere and nowhere. We make them afraid to sleep, afraid to trust their own senses. Fear is a weapon as powerful as any gun. The Scytherai military began to fracture under the pressure. Commanders started questioning orders. Ships stayed close to home to protect their own territories instead of joining offensive fleets. The conquered species under their control sensed weakness and pushed harder for freedom. In the Scytherai Imperial Palace, Veldar received report after report of disasters. His scales had turned a dull gray, the color of shame and confusion. They are not fighting like warriors, he said for the 100th time. They use tricks and deception. They attack targets that bring no honor. They strike at civilians and infrastructure. An elderly Scytherai advisor named Telvar spoke carefully. Perhaps, War Commander, that is because they do not fight for honor. They fight to win. There is no glory in such fighting. There is survival, Telvar said. And the humans seem very good at surviving. The humans also did something that shocked the entire galaxy. Captain Jennifer Blake led a strike team that infiltrated a Scytherai prison ship. Instead of destroying it, they freed the prisoners, hundreds of aliens from dozens of species. They recorded everything, the torture chambers, the forced labor, the casual brutality. Then they broadcast it across the galaxy. The Galactic Council, which had remained neutral, suddenly faced enormous pressure from their own populations. How could they stand by while such atrocities continued? Some species began sending covert aid to humanity, weapons and intelligence and ships. Elder Morvine watched all of this from the archivist homeworld with sad eyes. He had tried to warn Veldar, but the warrior had not listened. Now the galaxy was learning what happened when you backed humans into a corner. They are turning the entire galaxy against the Scytherai, his assistant observed. This is sophisticated psychological warfare. It is more than that, Morvine said. This is what humans do. They suffered under tyranny for thousands of years on their own world. They learned every trick of propaganda, every method of resistance, every way to turn public opinion. Now they use those lessons against an empire that only knows brute force. In the human fleet, morale was surprisingly high despite the casualties. Soldiers understood they were fighting for something real, not for conquest or glory, but for the right to exist without fear. Captain Marcus Webb recorded a message to his family before his next mission. "I know this war is terrible. I know we are doing things that will haunt us later. But the Sci-Fi left us no choice. They thought we were weak because we chose peace. Now they are learning that choosing peace does not mean being unable to fight. It means being strong enough to hold back. But when you murder our children, when you destroy our homes, you break that choice. And what comes after is not pretty." The war was far from over. The Sci-Fi still had vast fleets and resources. But something fundamental had changed. The prey had become the predator. And the predator was just getting started. Admiral Thomas Grant stood before a holographic map of Sci-Fi space, studying the red dot at its center. The Sci-Fi throne world, Zeta Prime, home to 12 billion civilians and the heart of an empire that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries. His command staff waited in silence, knowing what he was about to propose. "How long to reach it?" Thomas asked quietly. Captain Emily Foster pulled up trajectory calculations. "With conventional drives, 6 weeks. But sir, the throne world is protected by 3 defensive fleets, orbital weapons platforms, and a planetary shield that could withstand a sustained bombardment for months." "I did not ask about their defenses. I asked how long to reach it." Emily glanced at her fellow officers nervously. "Admiral, surely you are not suggesting a direct assault on their homeworld. The casualties would be unacceptable," Thomas finished. "You are right. A direct assault would cost us thousands of ships and millions of lives." He pressed a button and the display changed. "That is why we are not going to assault it. We are going to knock on their door and make them listen." General Peter Harris joined the meeting via secure transmission from Earth. His weathered face looked tired. "Admiral, I hope you are not proposing what I think you are proposing." "Project Hammer," Thomas said simply. "It is time." The room fell silent. Project Hammer was humanity's most closely guarded secret, a weapon so terrible that even suggesting its use had been forbidden until now. Rachel Morrison, who had been listening from the corner, stepped forward. "Admiral, using relativistic kill vehicles on a populated system crosses every line we have. The Council will turn against us completely. We will become the monsters we are fighting." "We will not target the planet itself," Thomas said. "Just their outer system defenses. Every weapons platform, every shipyard, every military installation within 5 light hours of their sun. We show them we can reach their home anytime we want. Then we give them a choice." In the deepest levels of Lunar Base, hidden in craters on Earth's moon, scientists had been working on Project Hammer for 40 years. They took ordinary asteroids, fitted them with powerful engines, and accelerated them to 90% of light speed. At those velocities, even a small rock carried the kinetic energy of a nuclear weapon. And humanity had prepared hundreds of them. Dr. William Clark, the project's lead scientist, watched as final calculations were made. His hands shook slightly as he entered the launch codes. "May God forgive us for building this," he whispered. Lieutenant James Abbott, the targeting officer, looked up from his console. "All systems ready, Doctor. Awaiting final authorization." The authorization came from Thomas himself, transmitted with his personal encryption key. "Launch sequence authorized. Fire when ready." Across the lunar surface, hidden launch tubes opened. One by one, massive rocks shot into space, their engines burning with impossible brightness. Within hours, they had accelerated beyond any speed natural objects could achieve. They became bullets traveling through the cosmos, invisible to most senses, unstoppable by any known defense. The journey would take 3 weeks. During that time, humanity did not sit idle. Captain Jennifer Blake led a series of brutal raids deep into Sci-Fi territory. Her orders were simple: make noise, draw attention, force them to spread their fleets thin. Every attack was designed to make the Sci-Fi believe the humans were preparing for a conventional assault. On the 5th day, her fleet struck the Sci-Fi Military Academy on Corvin 3. The facility trained officer candidates, young Sci-Fi eager to serve their empire. Jennifer's weapons officer hesitated when the target appeared on screen. "Captain, there are students down there. Cadets who have never seen combat." Jennifer's jaw tightened. "Their commanders murdered our children. Our elderly. Our sick and wounded. Fire all weapons. The academy burned. Jennifer watched it happen and felt something cold settle in her chest. War was turning them all into killers. But stopping now would mean all the deaths had been for nothing. Meanwhile, Captain Marcus Webb led covert operations that targeted Sci-Fi leadership. His Special Forces team infiltrated the Palace District on Zeta Prime itself, moving through sewers and maintenance tunnels. They planted listening devices and hacking tools throughout the government infrastructure. "We are in the heart of their empire," Marcus whispered to his team. "Record everything. Every military plan, every supply route, every secret they have. And make sure they know we were here." Before they left, they projected a simple message on the main palace display screen: "You cannot hide. You cannot run. Surrender or face extinction." Then they vanished into the night like ghosts. The psychological impact was devastating. If humans could reach the palace itself, no one was safe. Sci-Fi government officials began demanding peace negotiations. But War Commander Veldar refused. "We do not negotiate with inferior species," he roared at the High Council. "One more major offensive and we will crush them." But the Sci-Fi military was crumbling from within. Captain David Stone's cyber warfare teams had been busy. They hacked into military pay systems and discovered records of corruption. Sci-Fi commanders had been stealing from their own soldiers for years, selling military supplies for personal profit. David made sure every enlisted Sci-Fi soldier saw those records. Trust between officers and their troops evaporated overnight. Some ships reported mutinies. Others simply refused to follow orders. On the conquered worlds, rebellions grew stronger. The species enslaved by the Sci-Fi saw humanity's success and found courage. On Vela Prime, workers seized control of 3 major cities. On Nexa 9, silicon-based beings cut power to Sci-Fi military bases. Everywhere, the Empire was burning from within. Elder Morvine watched these events with growing alarm. He called an emergency council session and addressed the assembled species. "The humans are demonstrating something we have never seen before," he said, his ancient voice heavy with concern. "They call it the doctrine of disproportionate response. For every human they lose, they make the Sci-Fi lose 100. For every colony destroyed, they destroy 10 Sci-Fi installations. They do not seek equal exchange. They seek overwhelming retaliation." A council member from the peaceful Valorian species spoke up. "But surely this cannot continue. The destruction on both sides is horrific." "That is exactly the point," Morvine explained. "The humans want the cost to be so terrible that no one will ever attack them again. They are teaching the galaxy a lesson written in fire and blood." 3 weeks after launch, the relativistic kill vehicles reached Sci-Fi space. Veldar was in his command center when the first defense platform simply ceased to exist. No warning, no time to react. One moment it was there, the next it was an expanding cloud of vaporized metal. Then another platform died. And another. And another. "What is happening?" Veldar demanded. "Why are our defenses not firing?" "They cannot fire, Commander," his tactical officer said, voice shaking. "The projectiles are moving too fast. By the time our sensors detect them, they have already struck. We cannot stop them." For 6 hours, humanity's rocks fell from the sky like the wrath of an angry god. Every military installation in the outer Sci-Fi system was obliterated. Shipyards that had built warships for centuries were reduced to debris. Weapons platforms that had never been breached simply vanished. But the rocks never touched the planet itself. They came close enough that everyone on the surface could see them streak past, close enough to be a visible threat, but they did not strike civilian targets. When the bombardment finally stopped, Thomas sent a message directly to the Sci-Fi High Council. His face appeared on every screen across their homeworld. "People of the Sci-Fi Empire, your leaders started a war they cannot win. We have just demonstrated that we can destroy your entire outer defense network without losing a single ship. We could continue. We could throw rocks at your planet until your atmosphere burns away. We could deploy weapons that would crack your world like an egg." He paused, letting that sink in. "But we will not. Not because we lack the ability, but because we are not like you. We do not wage war on civilians. We do not murder children in their beds. However, if your military continues this war, if you launch one more attack on human colonies, we will return. And next time, we will not stop at your defenses." The message ended with coordinates and a timeline. "You have 96 hours to respond with unconditional surrender. Every hour you delay, we will destroy another major military installation. Choose wisely." Veldar sat in his command chair, scales pale with shock. Around him, his advisors argued frantically. Some demanded immediate counterattack. Others begged for peace negotiations. But everyone understood the same terrible truth. The prey had become the predator. And the predator had its jaws around their throat. The 96-hour deadline ticked down in command centers across human and Sci-Fi space. Admiral Thomas Grant stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, positioned just outside the Sci-Fi home system. Behind him floated 200 human warships, silent and waiting like wolves watching wounded prey. War Commander Veldar had not slept in 3 days. His scales had turned a sickly gray color, and his clawed hands trembled as he reviewed casualty reports. 3 million Sci-Fi soldiers dead. Hundreds of ships destroyed. Dozens of conquered worlds in open rebellion. And now, human weapons hanging over his homeworld like a sword ready to fall. Commander, his aide Korvac said quietly. The High Council demands your presence. They are voting on surrender terms. We do not surrender, Veldar hissed, but his voice lacked conviction. The Sci-Fi have never surrendered in 800 years of warfare. Then perhaps it is time we learned how, Korvac replied. In the Imperial Palace, the High Council chamber was filled with angry voices. Ministers and generals shouted at each other, scales flashing with fear and rage. Finally, Elder Councillor Telvar raised his hand for silence. We must face reality, the old Sci-Fi said. Our empire is dying. Half our conquered worlds have rebelled. Our fleets are destroyed. Our people are terrified. And the humans have proven they can reach us anytime they wish. He looked directly at Veldar. Your pride has cost us everything, War Commander. Veldar wanted to argue, but the words would not come. He had believed the humans were weak. He had thought their peace meant they had forgotten how to fight. He had been so terribly, catastrophically wrong. What do they want? He asked finally. Telvar activated a holographic display showing the human demands. Complete disarmament of all military fleets. War crimes trials for those who ordered attacks on civilian targets. 100 years of reparations paid to human colonies. Independence for all species we conquered. And permanent human observers stationed in our government to ensure compliance. That would destroy everything we built, a younger general protested. Our empire would cease to exist. Our empire already ceased to exist, Telvar said coldly. The moment we attacked that colony ship. With the time at 12 hours remaining, a single Sci-Fi shuttle departed from the throne world carrying a white flag of surrender. Admiral Thomas received the transmission request and accepted it. Veldar's face appeared on screen, and Thomas was struck by how defeated the warrior looked. Gone was the arrogant commander who had mocked humanity in the council chamber. This was a broken leader who had led his people to disaster. Admiral Grant, Veldar said slowly, his translator converting the hissing Sci-Fi language. I wish to discuss terms. There are no terms to discuss, Thomas replied. Only terms to accept. Unconditional surrender or continued destruction. Those are your only choices. You would destroy an entire civilization. You murdered 15,000 of our civilians without hesitation. You struck at our colonies, killing hundreds of thousands more. You asked what we had ever conquered. Thomas leaned forward. We conquered our own violent nature. We built a civilization based on cooperation and peace. But you reminded us what we used to be. You reminded us that survival sometimes requires becoming monsters. Veldar's scales rippled with what might have been shame. I underestimated your species. I thought warriors were defined by how much they fought. I did not understand that true warriors are defined by how much they can endure. Now you understand, Thomas said. But understanding comes too late. You will surrender completely, or we will remove your species as a threat permanently. Not because we want to, but because we must. We will never again allow someone to threaten human children and walk away unpunished. 6 hours later, Veldar stood before the Galactic Council in the same chamber where he had mocked humanity months earlier. His scales were pale, his shoulders slumped. Behind him stood the entire Sci-Fi High Council, all of them showing signs of defeat and exhaustion. The Sci-Fi Empire formally surrenders, Veldar announced. We accept all human demands without condition. We acknowledge our war crimes and submit to galactic justice. Elder Morvine nodded sadly. The Council accepts your surrender. War Commander Veldar, you are hereby ordered to stand trial for crimes against sapient life. Your military command is dissolved effective immediately. Thomas Grant stepped forward, and Veldar flinched involuntarily. The human admiral walked until he stood face to face with the Sci-Fi commander. You killed 15,000 of ours, Thomas said quietly. We killed 3 million of yours. Remember that ratio, Commander. Remember what happens when you mistake patience for weakness. Remember what happens when you attack those who only wanted to be left in peace. I will remember, Veldar whispered. The entire galaxy will remember. The formal surrender was signed aboard the Indomitable. Captain Jennifer Blake watched as Sci-Fi military codes were transferred to human control. Beside her, Captain Marcus Webb looked exhausted. They had all lost friends in this war, had all done things they would never forget. Was it worth it? Marcus asked quietly. Jennifer thought about the children who would never grow up, the families torn apart, the nightmares that would haunt survivors for generations. No war is worth it. But some wars are necessary. The Sci-Fi left us no choice. On Earth, celebrations erupted in every city. Billions of humans took to the streets, crying and laughing and holding each other. The war was over. They had survived. But Admiral Thomas Grant did not celebrate. He stood in the observation deck of his ship, looking at the stars, thinking about all the lives lost on both sides. Rachel Morrison found him there hours later. You should be proud, Admiral. We won. We survived, Thomas corrected. Winning and surviving are not the same thing. Winning implies glory. This was just necessary violence. The Council is reforming their laws, Rachel said. New protections for civilian vessels. Mandatory arbitration before military action. Heavy penalties for attacking non-combatants. Some good came from this horror. Some good, Thomas agreed. And maybe, just maybe, other species will think twice before attacking the quiet ones. Maybe they will remember that humans stayed peaceful not because we were weak, but because we were strong enough to choose peace. 10 years passed. The Sci-Fi Empire was dismantled, its conquered peoples freed. War Commander Veldar served a life sentence in a human-run prison, where he spent his days writing memoirs about the war. His book became required reading in military academies across the galaxy, a cautionary tale about underestimating peaceful species. The Sci-Fi themselves slowly rebuilt their civilization, this time focusing on cooperation rather than conquest. Young Sci-Fi grew up learning about their people's greatest shame and greatest lesson. On the anniversary of the war's end, a joint memorial was constructed on a neutral world. It bore the names of all who died, human and Sci-Fi alike. At the dedication ceremony, a human mother and a Sci-Fi father stood together, both having lost children in the conflict. We remember them, the inscription read. We remember the cost of pride. We remember the price of peace. We remember that the strongest species is not the one that fights most often, but the one that knows when fighting is truly necessary. Captain Jennifer Blake attended the ceremony with her wife and daughter. Her daughter, now 20 years old, studied the memorial with thoughtful eyes. Mom, did we win the war? She asked. Jennifer was quiet for a long moment. We ended it. That is all that matters. Across the galaxy, new species were emerging into the wider community. They learned quickly that humanity controlled only a small region of space but was treated with enormous respect. When asked why, Elder Morvine would show them recordings of the Sci-Fi War. Watch, he would say. Watch what happens when you attack those who only wanted peace. Watch what happens when you mistake kindness for weakness. The humans do not seek empire. They do not desire conquest. But harm their children, destroy their homes, and you will face something far more terrifying than any warrior culture. What is that? The newcomers would ask. A species that survived 4 billion years on a planet that tried to kill them every single day. A species that learned every possible way to fight, to endure, to outlast any threat. A species that chooses peace not from weakness, but from knowing exactly how destructive they can be. Admiral Thomas Grant retired from active service and became an instructor at Earth's military academy. On the first day of every semester, he would tell his students the same thing. War is not glorious. It is not noble. It is mathematics written in blood. The Sci-Fi learned that lesson at terrible cost. Never forget that we have the power to destroy worlds. Never forget that we choose not to use it. But also never forget that if someone forces our hand, if someone threatens humanity's existence, we will do whatever is necessary to survive. His students would nod solemnly, understanding the weight of that responsibility. Peace, Thomas would conclude, is not the absence of the ability to fight. Peace is having that ability and choosing to set it aside. Until the moment someone gives you no other choice. The Sci-Fi War became a turning point in galactic history. For the first time, species understood that humanity was not to be trifled with. Not because humans were aggressive or expansionist, but because they were survivors. And survivors, when pushed too far, become the most dangerous creatures in existence. The galaxy learned to leave humanity alone. And humanity, having proven its point, returned to its peaceful corner of space, building, exploring, and dreaming of a future without war. But always, they remained ready. Because that is what survivors do.